I was going to talk about the self-grasping today, but Jeffrey mentioned a point on the talk Saturday that related to what I had said in the last session, so I thought to talk about that because he was saying that in Buddhism there's compassion means compassion for others, and it doesn't mean compassion for yourself. And he was commenting about how many people, Tibetans included, were talking about compassion as compassion for oneself. And he didn't like that idea very much. So while it's true when they talk about compassion in Buddhism, it does refer to compassion for others. I don't think that it's a fault to have compassion for ourselves if we understand what compassion for ourselves means correctly. Okay? Because in Western psychology now, everybody's saying compassion for yourself, kindness to yourself, and that's fine, but often people don't understand what that means, and it becomes self-indulgence, and they also forget that the real meaning of compassion is compassion for others. So they're focusing all the time on compassion for myself, for themselves. I was abused, I was mistreated, I have to have compassion for myself, I shouldn't be so hard on myself, And so while that's true, and people may need to do that for their practice, because certainly being hard on ourselves has absolutely no purpose or value in Buddhism. Okay. At the same time, we have to realize that the purpose of being kind to ourselves and being patient with ourselves and having compassion for our pain and so on is so that we can get beyond these things and not stay stuck in them. Okay? So it means getting beyond the identity of I was abused, I was mistreated, I had this suffering and that suffering and the other suffering. It means getting beyond that, because if we want to become bodhisattvas, we can't stay stuck in our own suffering. When there's constantly the feeling of, of hurt and pain and I've been mistreated and abused coming up in our mind, we can't get to compassion for other people because the mind is completely focused on ourselves. Yeah? So it's natural for ordinary beings to feel hurt and pain and so on. But what we're saying is that Dharma practice means going beyond being an ordinary sentient being and helping ourselves to grow so that we don't stay stuck in that kind of thing. Okay? Communicating? Yeah? So I think this is, I can't read Jeffrey's mind, you may want to ask him yourself, but I'm thinking that maybe this was what he was referring to. Because I remember quite clearly, when His Holiness in one discussion was very surprised that people had such low self-esteem and self-hatred and felt so inadequate and so forth. And after that, he started talking about compassion as the antidote. And when he spoke about compassion, he didn't mean compassion for ourselves. He was talking about compassion for other living beings. And I remember at first thinking, well, gee, maybe Your Holiness, you didn't understand what people were feeling. But then when I really started thinking about it very deeply and looking at my own mind, I realized that generating compassion for others pulled me out of myself. And it was pulling me out of myself that was needed in order to stop the hurt and pain and identity of being a victim and da-da-da-da-da. Okay? In other words, that there was some part, as long as I was, oh, well, poor me, this happened in my life, and, poor me, I'm hard on myself, that there was something about that that wasn't letting me grow. and why I had to be patient with myself and tolerant with myself. I had to get beyond myself and really open my eyes and see the situation of other living beings. Okay? And it was that thing of like, oh my goodness, what are other people feeling in this situation? What is their life experience? What are they going through? What have they gone through? And it was that really made me see that my own problems were actually not that serious. And my own hurt and my own pain were not that bad. So it was really opening the mind to have compassion for others that cured this kind of self-concern or self-centeredness that keeps us stuck on ourselves. Okay? So I think this is what Jeffrey was getting at, that we need to open our heart, open our perspective, and look beyond ourselves. And then we put our own experiences in a proper perspective. And see that, they really weren't that bad. Okay? It's true, isn't it? Yeah? If you think what people in Syria are going through right now, yeah? Or who knows where else in the world, yeah? Then, what we have here is we have the fortune of having the pain of the God realms, because we live in the God realms here. Yeah? And so to really open our heart and look beyond ourselves, I think it's that itself is quite healing. Mm-hmm.
Maybe they have been bad, but still that can also help us to understand better the pain of others, what they're going through.
That's what I mean.
So,
yeah. Well, you mean that understanding our own pain helps us understand others' pain.
For me it doesn't work so much to say, oh, my experience hasn't been so bad, but I can accept, I can say, okay, my experience was bad, but I'm able to think about others and have feeling how they're experiencing right now their life, their pain and so on.
Okay, so you're saying that saying your own pain was bad, but that helps you understand others is something helpful. That's fine, but it'd be nice if you got to the point where you were able to say, my pain wasn't that bad. Yeah? Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be nice to be able to get to the point where we could say our own pain wasn't that bad? You look at His Holiness. Yeah? When he talks about compassion, does he first, tell you, they made me become leader of a country at age 15? You think you have problems. What do you think it was like becoming the leader of a country, and a country in crisis at age 15? Yeah, think about what you worried about at age 15 and what he had to think about at age 15. Yeah? But does he talk about this and how bad it was? Does he, tell you about how the Chinese were trying to kill him and he had to dress up and hide in a dirty old truck to escape, out of Norbalinka, and how he had to trek across the Himalayas in March when it's freezing cold, Does he, that must have been quite difficult. Yeah, and then you wind up in a refugee camp and, a whole new world with all sorts of microbes that your body isn't used to, and all the people around, so many Tibetans are dying, and you don't know what's happening in your own country, and your whole culture and Buddhism and everything you cherish is getting demolished. Imagine the pain that he went through. Yeah? And And yet, does he introduce himself as, I was abused, I was a victim, my pain is so great? You know, he doesn't introduce himself that way. Yeah. And even when you get to know him, he doesn't, that isn't his MO, you know? And so I think that can be an example for us of like, okay, this stuff happened. It is not happening now. It is over and done with. Let's drop it and get on to making a better future, and get on to practicing the Dharma, and get on to opening our eyes to really see the experience of other people and having compassion for them. Yeah? So this is a kind of nudge, isn't it? Some of you may feel quite uncomfortable saying to yourself, oh, now I'm a bad person because I feel pain. Did I say that? I did not say it. You're saying it to yourself. So don't blame me for that one. Yeah. Okay. But really look and think, wouldn't it be nice if I could get beyond this stuff and not have it follow me around my whole life? Yeah? Wouldn't it be nice to look at other people freshly and with compassion and, you know, move with enthusiasm towards the future, seeing the potential? Yeah? Because it's us who put on the shackles on ourselves that make us stay stuck in whatever happened in the past. Yeah. It's not happening now. And if you want to stay stuck in what happened in the past, why are you thinking about your childhood? Why not think of what you went through all your previous lives? All the pain we experienced in our previous lives was much greater than what we experienced in our childhood of this life. So if you want to remember pain, think of all that pain in your previous lives and develop renunciation of samsara. Yeah, that's the way to do it. Okay? So you can see that, you know, psychology is useful and helpful, yeah, but psychology and Dharma don't always see things exactly the same way, and the treatment isn't exactly the same way. And so some people need psychological therapy as well as Dharma, and some people are able to use the Dharma, you know, in replacement of that. So it's, you know, quite individual for different people. Yeah, but what I'm presenting is the Dharma perspective here. And I'm kind of challenging you. In the same way as holiness is challenging us. Yeah?
How do we make sure that compassion doesn't become personal distress? Because I understand that.
Okay, so how do we keep the compassion from becoming personal distress? Is by making sure that our mind is focused on others' experience. Personal distress is, I can't stand to see them suffer, and feeling distressed about it. Now it's true, compassion cannot bear others' suffering. Yeah, so there is that element of not being able to bear others' suffering, but it's not, I'm totally overwhelmed and unable to function because my personal distress at your suffering is so great. Yeah, it's like, wow, that person is suffering, and it's so needless. It's so unnecessary for sentient beings to suffer. You know, that all this suffering arises due to self-grasping ignorance, which is an inaccurate way of apprehending the world. So all this suffering is totally unnecessary. Yeah? And so a bodhisattva, I think, finds other suffering unbearable because they see it's unnecessary and that there is an antidote you know. And so seeing that there is an antidote galvanizes the bodhisattvas to really be able to reach out and teach the Dharma to sentient beings. Whereas personal distress is like, oh, they're suffering so much, what am I going to do? And then somebody needs to take care of us because we're such a wreck. Yeah?
If we look in the side of the karma, like whatever we went through, we develop some patterns, fear, being fearful, or stop our communication. Is those experiences just waking up the seed, or it's, how does it work?
Okay, so if we had difficulties in the past, then we often reacted to them with certain, and developed certain emotional patterns that were coping mechanisms for the pain in the past, right? And then the difficulty is that we keep using those same mechanisms in the future, even when the situation itself is different. Okay, so that is just a mental habit. Yeah, it's just a mental habit based on conception. Yeah, and so maybe it worked when you were little, but also maybe it didn't work so well then. But maybe it did. But in any case, the situations we're encountering now are different, and we're a different person. And so we have complete open space to develop new and much more effective ways of responding to new and different events, you know, so that the person you're talking to, you know, that you may have trouble with, they are not your father. You know, they are not your mother. They are not the person who abused you when you were little. They are a unique individual, and this is a unique new situation. So let's, you know, be creative in how to respond to it instead of just pushing our same old emotional response buttons that are often not very appropriate for the specific situation we're in. Okay? So becoming aware of our emotional response buttons is the first step. And then practicing in our meditation, imagining different situations and imagining responding differently to them. Okay? And so one of the different ways we may respond in that kind of situation is responding with compassion. Yeah, and feeling our own inner power, the power that the Dharma perspective gives to your mind. Okay? When we have a Dharma perspective, our mind becomes very powerful, and situations that previously would have just made us crash and burn, we don't have to crash and burn anymore, because we see those situations in an entirely different light. Yeah? And so that is the effect of Dharma practice. Okay? And that is our own personal growth. Okay? So it takes work.
Courage.
And courage. You bet. It takes courage to change old patterns. But when we get tired of being miserable, and we see that our old patterns that are self-centered are making us miserable, then we begin to put stuff down and try and look at things in a different way. So I think this is what Jeffrey was saying when he was saying, you know, compassion means for others.